It's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And
There
you're
we go.
watching the N Squared
We have,
TechCast.
yes, we have Eric Hipple, a former Detroit Lions quarterback, essentially during the 1980s. That was your era, right, Eric?
Oh yeah, that was 10 years of the 80s. That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I still remember that breakthrough game you had on a Monday Night Football. That was a lot of fun to watch as a long-suffering Lions fan. So
that was a breakout a moment, and it changed the course of my life. It was fantastic.
Yep.
Well, so since then, Eric has got involved in a number of things. He's working with the NFL. He's working with the military on life's transitions. Eric got banged up a little bit in football, and so he's dealing with a lot of the same issues that a lot of the former football players, a lot of the military folks are dealing with. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Eric?
Yeah, really, and it started with this background started when I was working at U of M, the University of Michigan Depression Center, and we were contracted by the NFL Players Association to look at depression rates for foreign football players. But through that research, what I found out, and what I looked at, every single player had problems with the transition. And transitions are tough on everybody. It's not just former football players, but life transitions that change the direction of somebody's course of their life, especially if they're not expected or if they're unwanted. When a person gets fired, a person goes through divorce, a major move. And in certain populations, and like former players that wore a uniform, law enforcement that wore a uniform, veterans that wear a uniform, top executives that have their suits but their uniform, when they go through transitions and all of a sudden aren't doing what they were wearing that uniform for anymore, that loss of purpose, that loss of identity, that loss of self-sense, and like I said, and mission-oriented stuff is gone. And that can be very painful and very disorienting. So I'll just pick up. So through that process, we started looking at how do you reconnect and how do you put programs together to make those connections. And one of those things that we did, I saw early on, was reaching out and having a community peer-to-peer reach out and connect. The reciprocal peer support model, which is built around call-in places, crisis centers, where you have a peer there of whatever population it is to get them to the clinical delivery. We flipped it upside down. Detroit Lions and our Lions alumni put together a peer outreach group. So we have 8 guys that are trained to do outreach calls. And so it's about communication, and it's about community and reconnecting and getting guys involved. And so if he does have an issue, then we're there to help him. But really, it's about community.
So you actually have a group of people that reach out to former Lions rather than waiting for them to call you, huh?
Yeah, and that's really the trick, because we're not looking just for things that are when somebody's in trouble. We're actually trying to reconnect and give them tools, to uplift them and reconnect them. So, find out how they're doing, but also let them know that they're wanted, they belong to something. That lack of belonging when you leave something that you've done for so long is really is part of the problem. And so reconnecting to that just helps, the mental health and those and life events that you run into.
Yeah.
And sort of tying it into what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19 and the fact that we're all locked down, there may be a lot of people out there that are having a real mental issue with this because they can't go to bars, restaurants, be with the family. They're like me and Matt sitting in our houses, and you. How can you help those kinds of folks?
Well, that's a difficult thing, because this is a major transition. Nobody knows what's going to happen when we come out of this either, and that's really going to be a major change. And when somebody's facing change like that, and the worry, the anxiety, the maybe feeling helpless and feeling trapped and not knowing what to do, those things can really exacerbate the anxieties that we have, and maybe maladaptive behavior starts to happen. Like maybe I start drinking too much because maybe that was my tool, or maybe I start getting angry and isolating, so I'm in the room by myself, even though my wife's in the other room, but I don't know how to deal with her because I can't communicate with her anymore. And so there's some really negative aspects of that. And so reaching out and connecting is an important way of solving some of those issues. The thing is, we're working with a group that's kind of come together. One is Journey Pure, which is a treatment addiction center. There's Vanderbilt University, which through a doctorate student there that named Noah Robinson, who had the idea of going through virtual reality and dealing with his own addictions, but not just by going online and playing games. It's actually based around a model that was put together by Smart Recovery. They are good at doing telemedicine and connecting, but all those aspects of it is, how do I engage somebody? See, I've got an opinion, but also kind of a mission, which is, instead of waiting until somebody's in trouble and then trying to get to a clinician, why don't we raise everybody's educational level up a bit? And so maybe some of the things that I might fear, or something going through a transition, I might recognize them, and I have some coping mechanisms in place to do with it, so I don't get to that point where I really have to, take drastic action. And that's really what this whole model is about. So the peer-to-peer through virtual technology, virtual worlds, we actually built a locker room. And so guys can feel comfortable going to a locker room. For law enforcement, you can build a station house, where you start in that room. But really, the virtual reality piece is, you can be in that place, you can create any type of room that you want, but still about connection. And so this is therapy-based. I shouldn't say that. It's not therapy-based. It is based on education through therapy ideas on how to raise the element up a little bit. So you can go to a place, still have fun, but yet there's educational tools around you that you're constantly involved with.
All right. Mike, there have been so many people laid off from newspapers in the last few years. I think maybe we ought to create a virtual newsroom.
Yeah. Yeah, we
there
all
you go.
used,
You can all sit around and toss the crap and find out and share your
yeah,
ideas.
we all lived in the pod farms for all those years, where you get the half wall with a person right next to you, and you're all smushed in together and all that.
Out of the virtual world, if you need to, you're not stuck there. So anyway, that's
Right.
great.
So one of the groups that you have is something called After the Impact. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, After the Impact was After the Impact Fund, so aftertheimpact.org, was actually created to help support veterans and former professional athletes go through treatment, help pay for treatment, go through transitional times when somebody is in need. But what it's become is more of a connecting factor. How do we connect these, like I said, these populations of veterans, maybe even crossover, because that's really where After the Impact got started. Was at a treatment facility where we actually mixed veterans in with former NFL players. And what we found is, one other way to cross is to handle a population, is to cross with another population that might have some of the same feelings, some of the same things that they go through, that loss of purpose, loss of sense of direction, that they go through, and loss of identity. And yet they come from it at different angles. And so that what they do is they talk more, they communicate more. And so that's kind of the virtual reality through Help Club that we're trying to do, which is, how do we bring different people together? Right now, Help Club is based on helping recovery through addiction. That's what it was kind of put together for. But as we see what, and we're in the beta test right now, by the way. So we're in a 30-day beta test and tracking it. And so from that, we'll gather some information. But I already know that the peer-to-peer portion of that works in going into a community and be able to crosstalk. One of the things is through avatars and stuff, you could be, I could be a 60-year-old guy walking into a locker room, and there's a 30-year-old guy, but with my avatar, he doesn't know my age. And so the information I have might be really worth something to him, but he wouldn't give me the time of day if he saw me walk in the locker room as a 60-year-old guy. And so that's one of the aspects of it as well, is be able to give information and to learn from each other.
Huh.
So After the Impact, aftertheimpact.org is a funding arm that we use to help veterans and help former professional athletes, and also help law enforcement to get those levels. And the outreach will continue to be on. The Detroit Lions peer-to-peer group, we've been together for 5 years, was deemed best practices by the NFL. And so we're starting to see some expansion, some other clubs wanting us to come in and create some of these peer groups with them. And this is just going to be an added tool to be able to use virtual reality to do that and to have outreach.
There's a lot of trauma from people that have been in the military, particularly those that have been in combat. How would that play out for that group?
Well, going through, there's already been, tests done on and research done on PTSD and veterans going through, so they can go into like similar circumstances and kind of do a little bit of exposure therapy be able to go to a peaceful place. In other words, you can actually slip on VR and go to a sanctuary somewhere that you've created, or a place you can be peace. So all the chaos around you can also just settle back down. It's the same tool that you'd use in meditation, but here you're actually in the physical environment of seeing something completely different and be able to interact in it. And so it has that aspect to it. But it also, tool building is one of the bigger things I think that, like I said, the veterans can have, be able to go back to that, to the group that they were with, that they can connect with, that understands them. And so they can actually talk about some of the things that they're going, and to have a therapist in the next portal, next room away. So if you need to walk into that room and talk to somebody, you can actually do it right online.
So it could be guys who are in the same unit together that maybe live in different parts of the country or the world that put on the headset and they're together again, right?
Yeah, in fact, the Polytrauma Center down in Tampa was using a VR scenario for this peacefulness type deal. They haven't used it for their for what we're using it for yet, but I think that's just around the corner. I think we're kind of one of the first ones to use it for peer-to-peer connection and learning and educational-based CBT, educational-based therapy.
Matt, you
All
got
right.
something?
Yeah, I was just curious. You had a pretty successful sales career, from what I understand, after football. So how did you happen to wind up connected with these groups?
Oh man, we all have a journey, right? It's
Yeah.
and then we have some more major life events, okay, that changes that direction. And mine was changed drastically. I lost a son to suicide, and so he was 15 years old at the time, and that put me into the mental health world. It also put me into the grief world and pain world, and also the suicide prevention world. And so I've been, for the last 18 years or 19 years maybe, have been down that track trying to find answers to the question of how do we be preventative and yet educational, so we don't wait until something goes wrong before we do something about it. Right now, the way the medical field is set up is that when you go see a doctor, it's because something has happened, something's gone wrong, and because of that, right now we're seeing a lot of influx going into mental health, and we're really not equipped with it from a psychiatric and therapy point of view. There's just not enough numbers to go. And so you'll have a 3-month wait before you get in somebody. So through different programs like what we're doing here, through the Impact, through Journey Pure, through an educational based program called Be Nice, which is benice.org, which is right here in Michigan, it's in Grand Rapids, where it's a school-based program that actually tries to raise the level up of basic mental health education. Not, school textbook type stuff, that's great, but stuff that you actually utilize and stuff in your talking and just understanding it, so it becomes second nature and normal in your normal behavior. So you can tag it with the term mental fitness if you want. Michigan High School Athletic Association stood behind it, and they had all 30,000 coaches were taught a little segment on this in their mental health training this year. And so to me, it's just raising that level and community and connection.
Yeah, I know. I do public address announcing for the high school that my kids went to, and the MHSA gives us commercials to read while we're PA announcing. Yeah. And there's been a big mental health push at the high school athletic level, I know. So yeah, it's all part of the anti-bullying thing that they're trying to get through. So
yeah, well, yeah, and that's a piece of it. But somebody who's where do bullies come from? I mean, sometimes somebody who's really angry, maybe the things aren't going for them. Maybe it's been an adverse childhood experience. So ACEs is what it's called. And so the more ACEs that you have, the more it affects your behavior as you age and get older. And so acting out behavior, risky behavior, maladaptive behavior, so substance use, crime. So trying to get in front of that is really, really where this is at. And I think it is. It doesn't have to be, targeted to only in therapy do you get this. I think we can raise the level so everybody at some degree has a baseline of a little bit of information and be able to reach out and recognize when somebody's not doing well, but recognize when somebody's doing good. You know what I mean? Because that's really important too. One thing about this crisis that's going on right now, we've talked about the negative aspects of it, but there are also some pretty good things too. There are some that, if you take some of the stress away, you know, what's going to happen financially and everything else. Take some of the stress away. People are actually having to face to be, you know, at home and look at each other, you know, eyeball to eyeball.
24/7.
You know,
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
Eric, we're about out of time for this segment, so why don't you get people how to get a hold of you and also how to get a hold of some of these programs online?
I can be reached at erichipple.com. I can also, if you want information on the programs that we're putting together, it's aftertheimpact.org. So aftertheimpact.org. And again, erichipple.com. You can reach me there at the website.
Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life. But LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.